Hello, my name is Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates and welcome back to another video. Yet again, we're going into another game week. I'm off the back of a green arrow. Josh, were you on a green arrow this week?
It's never green over here, mate.
Oh dear. Well, let's get straight into your teams and let's see how we can amend that red arrow into a green for this week.
Okay, then, so as Ben mentioned, thankfully, we got a pretty big red arrow last week, down to 1.7 mil. I feel like everything was going against me last week. It weren't a good showing. Dallo missing the open goal, obviously. We had Watkins obviously having his assist ruled out because it was about a millimetre out of the pitch. Just a nightmare of a game week, really. And obviously Mo Salah tends to get those 10 pointers every single time that I have a bad week. So not the ideal start, but I think we can claw it back. 1.7 million at this stage is not the end of the world. We've still got 28 game weeks to play. I've still got all my chips barring my first wild card as well. So yeah, still happy to be in this position. Like I say, obviously being in Ben's position is definitely way better, but we can still claw it back. And even if you're 3 million, 4 million, there's still a lot of work to be done. So yeah, getting into the defence, David Raya, Newcastle away, really disappointed with Arsenal defensively, to be honest. And if you do have the double up, I'd probably suggest moving off it right now. Their fixtures are getting really tough over the next 5 to 6. And in general, I just think defensively they've not been as good as as they were last season. Even at the start of the season when Raya was getting those 9 pointers, Arsenal were conceding a lot of shots, which obviously meant he was getting those big hauls due to the saves. So I just don't think they are defensive as solid this season. Saying that though, I'd be happy to have one of them, and I think Raya is probably a good long-term hold throughout the whole of the season. Arsenal will still keep quite a few clean sheets. In the defence, we've got Rico Lewis, obviously off the back of a clean sheet last weekend. Just the attacking threat is not really there with him. He picks up really good positions, just doesn't seem to get the ball, which is obviously what he needs to get those attacking returns. So yeah, for me, he's good. He's a cheap way into that defence. They've got so many injuries at the moment that I think rotation is not really going to happen unless something crazy happens with Pep Guardiola's tactics. So yeah, happy to hold him for this Bournemouth away fixture, but I don't think by any means this is a clean sheet that is locked in. Nuri, Crystal Palace at home. Obviously, I brought him in last week. I benched him for his goal. Classic. He's got Crystal Palace at home this week. This is the start of that really nice Wolves run. He is on 4 yellow cards though, so if you are looking at bringing him in, just be aware that if he's to pick up one more yellow, he is suspended for 1 game. So yeah, hopefully that's not this week because he's got Southampton next week as well. And then Mikalenko, speaking of Southampton, is playing them away from home this week. I think Everton defensively have looked a little bit better in recent weeks, and I'm hoping that they can keep a clean sheet away at St Mary's. What's the thoughts on the defence, Ben?
Yeah, like a decent sort of team to start off and a decent defence. Obviously, like you said, Rico Lewis is so cheap into City defence that it doesn't matter too much whether his attacking threat is really there. Like if you can keep ticking along with points, then that's very much sort of decent. Nori's a decent pick, really sort of like him in there. I think especially with Eze now being out injured potentially for this weekend as well, came off in midweek. I think it increases the appeal of Nuri and increases the potential of a clean sheet, which I don't have. Wolves had 1 clean sheet yet? I don't think they have so far this season, but it's you're not really getting him for the clean sheets. It's the attacking returns that you're really targeting there. And we'll see what happens with Everton. Like they've not been too great, but the fixtures sort of are relatively decent. So you've just got to sort of hope for a clean sheet there. And we'll see what Newcastle turns up against Raya as well.
Okay then, so moving on into the midfield. Cole Palmer is up first. The transfers last week was Gabriel and Saka to Palmer and Nuri. So overall we are up. Obviously I was expecting Saka to probably play after Arteta ruling him out all week. That's usually how it works with him at the moment. But yeah, really happy to have Palmer. I think longer term now, Cole Palmer, I could easily look at captain him maybe 7 out of the next 12 game weeks. Which is a fantastic option to have in the side. Even if this United fixture is looking pretty decent at the time of recording, Ruben Amorim is rumoured to become the new manager, but there's nothing confirmed yet. So I'd expect Ruud van Nistelrooy to take charge at Old Trafford at the weekend, which for me just looks good. They conceded twice in the Carabao Cup to Leicester, playing a pretty full strength defence, and Leicester were playing Jordan Ayew up top. So yeah, let's hope that Cole Palmer can get some goals there. Brian Mbuemo's up next off the back of a 15-point haul. He looked really good, despite scoring quite late on in that game against Ipswich. The fixtures are still there for Brentford. Really happy to have him. Should be probably 8.5 million. Really good asset at the moment and really cheap and quite differential. Like, he's only around 40 to 50% owned, which is still, you're going to get some decent gains out of that. So yeah, happy to have him. Semenyo is the biggest problem in the midfield at the moment. He's got City at home this week. I do not really want to sell him though. The fixtures after that for Bournemouth are really decent. So the transfer that I have in mind that I'll come on to in a bit is to try and bench Semenyo. I don't think it's a horrible fixture. I could easily see him scoring. Obviously, City have only kept 2 clean sheets so far this season. Even against Southampton, they were lucky not to concede with Cameron Archer hitting the bar. So for me, it's not a terrible fixture. If you had to play him, then fair dues. But for me, I'm going to try and bench him this week. Morgan Rogers, I'm more optimistic about this week. Obviously, he had a full rest, wasn't in the squad midweek, same as Ollie Watkins. So I think that Tottenham away fixture comes at a good time. Obviously, Van der Ven also went off early with an injury in the Carabao Cup this week, which is good news for Aston Villa going into that game. And then Phil Foden, it's just frustrating owning him at the moment. He played Haaland through on goal in that game against Southampton. He misses that. Just not getting those returns that I thought I was going to get when I brought him in. I sort of got him in ahead of the curve, but there's been no curve. It's just been a straight line to 2 and 3 pointers. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that midfield, Ben?
Yeah, a bit of an away day sort of lineup for you at the moment. Loads of players playing away from home, but yeah, no, I think you're right with the Semenyo conundrum. I think he's worth benching this week. Like, even sort of against, yes, 10-man Arsenal, but he still produced fantastic stats for that. So at home, he is a very good asset. So I certainly wouldn't sort of like, I'd personally also bench him, but if you've got to start him, like Josh said, not the end of the world. So a little bit frustrating with sort of like Foden, etc. At the time of recording, I believe he played just under 60 minutes and didn't get injured, if I'm correct. So yeah, that's not the worst in the world, because City, like you said, have quite a few injuries, and you know he could play again. I think he's a bit of a frustrating own, but you've got to hold him for that. And then yeah, I think with the sort of like Palmer that you got in there, like you said, the captaincy option is there. Obviously, Salah, the amount of double-digit hauls that he's getting this season is maybe a little bit unprecedented, but he's been so good this season, and yeah, maybe sort of a difficult one to swallow. But Palmer has been fantastic as well, and I do see him scoring against United. So yeah, all in all, very strong.
Okay, then to wrap up the team, we've got Ollie Watkins up top with Erling Haaland. Watkins, I thought, was super unlucky not to return last game week. He's only blanked twice in the last 7, so I can probably let him off on that. He's looked really sharp, really good form. As I mentioned with Rodgers, he wasn't in the squad for the Carabao Cup, so a full week's rest is much well deserved, I think, for both of them. I think Rodgers in particular looked quite leggy at the weekend in their draw with Bournemouth, so good to see that they're getting that rest that's needed. And then Erling Haaland is on the captaincy at the moment. I don't think I'll change that for now. Like we saw last week, so many chances. It's just one of those days where on another day he's coming away with, you know, a brace, a hat-trick, bonus points, all that malarkey, but we didn't quite see that against Southampton. I think we will see him score against Bournemouth. This Iraola's side, if a team can play through them, they tend to concede a lot of goals, and I think Man City are able to do that. So yeah, happy to have the captaincy on him this week. In terms of my transfer or the potential idea of transfers, it might be, I've got about 1.5, 1.8 million in the bank, so I can really easily upgrade Chiwomi up to a playing forward, so someone like a Raul Jimenez I've been thinking about. So that could be an option. I am also tempted to roll though, because the power of rolling free transfers is so important. So I'm in a bit of a debate. I think the most likely one at the moment, I'm probably 60% likely to making that forward transfer. I have thought about bringing in Garnacho as well for Semenyo, but as I mentioned, I'm not too keen on selling Semenyo. And then also Garnacho, I'm unsure whether he'll get consistent starts if Amorim is to come in charge, just because of the formation that he's going to field. So it's all up in the air. I probably would avoid United assets just for the meantime until he does come in and we can see who plays. What's the thoughts on the transfer business there, Ben? Do you think Raul Jimenez is a good shout?
I think Raul Jimenez is a fantastic shout, to be honest. And like, I think between sort of him and probably Vissa, I don't think you'd be able to get up to Cunha.
Yeah, it's like 5.9, I think.
Yeah, I think either of those are going to be really decent options. And with the case of the transfer, you also, if you make that transfer, you're going all in on City winning against Bournemouth and not conceding, which at the moment you're 50-50. So for the highest upside possible, you'd look to make that transfer and sort of hope that City come away with a big win to nil. And Semenyo obviously sort of blanks as a result of that. So yeah, for high upside, I'd do it. But if you're looking for safety and security, which at this point in the season, you're probably not sort of looking at that. You're 1.7 mil in the world, like it's worth sort of taking that risk. So if I was in your situation, I'd probably make that move. Okay, so moving on into my team, we're ranked 215k in the world off a decent green arrow last week. We still got all of our chips in hand, including that first wild card as well. So we're in a fairly decent position. At the moment, my plan on using it is potentially game week 12 when Palmer's fixtures really do turn fantastic. But even then, that's not 100% because the team all in all is pretty decent at the moment and there's not too many issues to address. There's a couple in there, but not too bad at all. So to go into defence, we've got Raya in goal, just like Josh. Start the season with him. Really good for the first 5 game weeks, not so great for the last 5, but that's what happens with keepers. Like if you transfer out Raya now, he'll get a double-digit haul this week, guaranteed. We've gone with the double City defence. We transferred in Rico Lewis last week because City had the highest percentage chance of keeping a clean sheet against Southampton, and they did rather comfortably. And that was fantastic and differential in itself because Lewis and Gvardiol are between 25-30% owned each in terms of EO. I'm more than happy actually to keep both of them in for this week. City again have the highest percentage chance of keeping a clean sheet. I think it's about 60 to 65% off the top of my head. So I'm happy to do that because I don't think there's actually going to be too many clean sheets at all this week. And if I can catch one of the maybe 2 or 3 that are going to happen this game week, then I'll be really happy with that. Trent Alexander-Arnold also got sort of a full rest midweek, which is fantastic. So Brighton at home, decent fixture in terms of sort of attacking returns. Brighton have traditionally at Anfield scored, but we'll have to just see about that. Again, sort of a lot of budget in that defence, a little bit less now that I made that Gabriel to Lewis transfer last week, which has turned out pretty well so far. Let's see how it turns out sort of going into this week. But Josh, what's your overall thoughts on the defence?
Yeah, I like the double up. I think Gvardiol has had the most touches in the opposition final third out of anyone in the Premier League so far this season, which is a mental stat. All positions as well. So the attacking threat is very much there for him. I think the top 5, to be fair, in that stat were all City players. So it just goes to show how much they're just dominating teams so far this season. Trent for me is an interesting one. I feel like he is playing such a much more reserved role to what we've seen under Klopp. He is getting involved a little bit more, but the chance creation, as we alluded to, I think last week, is definitely a lot more through set pieces rather than through the open play threat that we've seen in years gone by. So for me, he'd be someone that I'd probably look to move on in the future weeks when you're trying to get Palmer in. It's an easy sort of cash cow to get him down and then move that money into the midfield. But other than that, he is a decent option for this week. Like you mentioned, I don't think the clean sheet's necessarily there, but obviously the attacking threat is there from those set pieces, and you know Liverpool have been pretty dangerous from those so far this season.
Okay, so moving on into the midfield, and yeah, fairly sort of similar situation to last week. We've got 2 free transfers at the moment and a little bit of money in the bank. I think about, again, like sort of similar to Josh, between 1.3 and 1.5 million in the bank. So a little bit to work with there as well. Salah in there, I mean, 6 double-digit hauls in his first 10 game weeks is nothing short of remarkable for him. And I do see that trend carrying on. I do think he's going to get the attacking returns and he is going to get the hauls. Every time he scores, he gets in bonus, and it's just happened every game this season. It really does sort of push him sort of quite high in terms of points scored. So more than happy to own him at least for the next 2-3 game weeks, and then we'll reassess and see what we're going to do with Salah. And Buemo, of course, 15-point haul last week, like Josh said. Happy to keep him. And then we've got our 3 cheap midfielders that one of them seems to be scoring every week at the moment, which is really good, or at least getting some points. Smith Rowe got an assist last week off the back of sort of like a couple of blanks in a row. So really good to see him getting an attacking return. But yeah, same situation as Josh. I'm looking to use one of my 2 free transfers to bench Semenyo essentially in my team. So that's going to be the plan. It'll probably be a forward that I bring in, so it'll end up being a 3-4-3 that I do play. So Josh, what's the thoughts on the midfield? Sort of fairly similar in terms of sort of the personnel on there.
Yeah, a lot of the budget picks sort of pick themselves at the moment in FPL. I think, yeah, like you mentioned, Salah's been remarkable this season, but I think the change of the bonus point system definitely helped him. In regards to that, he's having a lot. I think it's like 75% of his shots are on target, and that gives him a bonus point immediately. Obviously, the way that they're playing as well, they're sitting a lot deeper, so he's getting a lot more take-ons than probably what he's used to do. And obviously, with the less attacking threat from the fullbacks that we've seen compared to Klopp, it makes his baseline bonus sort of almost level with those defenders, whereas in the past those defenders had a much higher one. So therefore, if he does return, him getting those 3-2 bonus points is almost guaranteed pretty much every single time. So yeah, really good pick. Obviously he's had I think 16 bonus points so far this season. He had 25 last season. So it goes to show that it's definitely favouring him so far this season. With those budget picks, like you mentioned, they all seem to be ticking over almost every other week. They're sort of taking it in turns. Smith Rowe, I think, is a decent pick still. I know he obviously went a bit cold, but when he's got a home fixture, you tend to back Fulham to win those games and at least score in them. They're a good offensive side. Same with Rodgers away at Tottenham. I think that's a really good fixture for them. I think defensively, Spurs are there to be had so far this season. I don't think they're doing much better than someone like Man United. I think if United won last week, they'd have gone above Spurs, which goes to show that they're not in the finest of form. And then, yeah, I think the idea to bench Semenyo this week is good on paper, especially in your scenario, like you mentioned, with that double defence. There's no point really in having Semenyo there if you're going to back that clean sheet.
Okay, yeah, and moving on into the strike force, and at the moment the captaincy is on Erling Haaland. I'm fairly set on the Haaland captaincy just because of the sheer volume of chances that he seems to be getting, even last week. I think he's due sort of a big haul, and the way Bournemouth play suits Haaland quite nicely. Vardy, Ipswich away as well. Like, Vardy seems to be ticking over just as well as those midfielders, which is really nice to see. Very much happy with him. Also got a rest midweek, which is fantastic because we know that he can't play too many minutes. He's 37 years old, so we're not going to expect sort of like him playing a Saturday, Tuesday, etc. So yeah, really happy with the fixture. Ipswich away is a really good one. Like, they seem to sort of be like not falling off a cliff, but losing a bit of the spark of being in the Premier League. They've come back down to earth a little bit, a lot sooner than we all thought they were going to. We thought that they'd sort of keep going for a little while longer, but it's a decent fixture for Vardy. In terms of the bench situation, Konza, João Pedro and Harwood Bellis. The planned transfer would be João Pedro. I'm leaning more towards bringing in Cunha into my team from Wolves at 6.5 million on penalties, a decent home fixture against a Palace team that sort of have a couple of injuries as well. So that's the thought process. I was looking at Raul Jimenez, but again, I've got coverage in the Fulham attack with Smith Rowe, so I don't want to overdo it. I thought about Wissa as well, but I came to the same conclusion. I didn't just want to overload my team with too many players, sort of more than one player from sort of a mid-table team. So if I go Mateus Cunha and one of Fulham, Brentford, Bournemouth or Leicester go off the boil a little bit in terms of attacking numbers, then at least I've not sort of put too many eggs in that basket. So that's the thought process behind it. And yeah, like I said, I'll play a 3-4-3, bring Semenyo onto the bench, and go from there. So Josh, that's the overall team. That's the transfer plan. What's the overall and final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect plan. I think Cunha is arguably the best £6.5 million forward going forwards now. I know Chris Wood's been absolutely lighting up the start of the Premier League, but the fixtures are tailing off for Forest. Wolves have a run of about 10 games where they've got good fixtures after a woeful set of 10 to start the season. And yeah, like similar to Salah as well, when he does score, he tends to get a lot of bonus points as well. So a really nice option there. I like Vardy as well. I think you brought him in at the right time for those good fixtures. Again, another player on penalties. So when he does score, he tends to get the bonus points as well. So yeah, good lineup. A lot of penalty takers, but that's what you need in FPL. They've got to score those goals, and yeah, good lineup, mate. Okay then, so that wraps up our Game Week 10 team reveals. Let us know what your dilemmas are heading into the deadline in the comments down below.
Yeah, and as always, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
I'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.